growing up, my family lived next door to a German baker named George Snyder. My family was often hungry and poor at the time, so as a favor, George the baker gave us his day-old breads and cakes from his bakery. He gave us hearty German breads like pumpernickel, rye, and my favorite, cheese bread. This loaf baked with wedges of sharp cheddar cheese inside that when you slice it, butter it, and toast it, it tastes like a grilled cheese sandwich. But the one item he gave us, which I refused to eat, was fruitcake. That toxic concoction that was more fruit than was cake. As a kid, I developed 5 rules for how to eat fruitcake. Rule number 1, always eat fruitcake with a knife and fork, because these are your tools for excavating the parts of your fruitcake you do not want to eat. When it comes to eating fruitcake, we are all archaeologists here. Rule number 2, always heap a big mountain of whipped cream on top of your thin slice of fruitcake. So when you're eating from the top, you can say, oh, this is the best fruitcake in the world. But of course, your fork hasn't even touched the fruitcake on the bottom. And by the time you get there, that thin slice of fruitcake has disintegrated. You can just throw it out. Rule number 3, always have your baby brother or sister seated next to you at the table when you eat fruitcake. Because you can pick out the candied green and red cherries and give them to them. And those that get, oh great, it's candy. They won't even know the difference. Rule number 4, always have a dog under the table when you eat fruitcake. Because when nobody's looking, you can just put the plate on the table and have the dog lick it off and then put the plate back on the table. And rule number 5, never be caught practicing rules number 1 through 4. Because if you are, someone, probably your mother, is going to shame you and say, you ought to be ashamed of yourself wasting all this good food. You should be grateful that somebody gave you something. You're not leaving this table until you finish that fruitcake. And then you're stuck eating that fruitcake. So I abided by these 5 rules for how to eat fruitcake. And they did me very well. And of course, after the holidays, the baker, George, asked me, hey, Andre, how do you like my fruitcake? I lied and said, oh, George, that was the best fruitcake in the world. And of course, you know what happened next year? He gave us another fruitcake. And I'm thinking, what are those 5 rules for how to eat fruitcake? I know. Rule number 1, always eat fruitcake with a knife and fork. Thank you very much. My name is Mont Wilson. I have a whole slew of stories coming up, including Tell It on Tuesday in January, my first debut there, a book, and also a Christmas show at the Silk Road House in Berkeley. Come see me for a flyer afterwards. Thank you very much. Thank you.